Good morning. It's Charlene SanJenko from Powerhouse Media Group, and I am thrilled this morning to be hosting another Speak to Lead. And today I am here with Janine Brolly, and our topic is Speak to Lead, Claim Your Worth. Janine is an advocate, facilitator, speaker, co-author, and founder of the Worthy and Wealthy Women's Mastermind. Janine's work in the world is wholeheartedly dedicated to having women show up more fully in their lives. And we are thrilled to have Janine on our Powerhouse interview today. Thank you so much for being here, Janine.
Well, thank you, Charlene, and thank you for all that you do.
Oh, I really appreciate it. And I'm going to dive right in. Janine and I have been working together for some time now, and one of the sayings, one of the communications that she uses a lot is show up more. Show up more. And Janine, I'm just going to start right there. I've heard you say it over and over again, and I'm wondering if you can talk to us about that quest that you have and where it all began for you.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I'd love to. So although it had been brewing for a while, I would say I had what I call an epiphany. It was January 2011. And in a nutshell, I had just gone through a breakup. And we were deeply in love, but I really felt we were not compatible. And this was on the tail end of a few years before that, my marriage of 18 years breaking up as well, ending that. So I thought to myself, well, what is the common denominator? I did not want to feel like this anymore. What is the common denominator? And the common denominator was me. So I thought, well, maybe I want to look at that, right? And so what I realized, just not in those relationships, but how I was really doing life. And this wasn't like huge. It was somewhat subtle. But how I was doing life was that I was overly giving. I was taking care of others. I was taking care of others at the cost of myself. You could say I was giving my energy away. I was selling myself short. And so I always say it's wonderful to give, but not when you're giving at the cost of yourself. And so there's a real difference. I say make sure you're giving of yourself as opposed to giving up yourself, right? And so in this realization, I realized I'd been doing my whole life with this proving energy, proving that I was worthy, proving that I was deserving, proving that I was lovable. And it all stemmed from, I was adopted. I was given up for adoption. I was at 6 weeks old. And so, I took on the belief around I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough. And, for me in that moment, I made a declaration. I'd been living with, proving my energy and giving away my energy. And it led to a pattern of burnout and not being totally fulfilled. And, for the most part, I had this outer success, things were pretty good, right? But it was just this underlying feeling of not being totally fulfilled. And it was in that moment, I made a declaration to myself because I think it kept rearing its head a bit, but it hit, it reared its head so much that I'm like, I'm done with this pattern. I'm done. And the declaration I said to myself is, I'm showing up now for me. I'm showing up now for me. In other words, you could say I was claiming my worth, but at the time I didn't know that. I didn't really think of that term, but that's really what I was doing. And it's all about showing up more. And that declaration shifted everything. It put me on a completely different trajectory in my life. And for years now, I've been working with different women in so many different capacities. And it is so common. It's epidemic. I always say it's epidemic, but it's also universal. So many women do not fully value themselves. We're not really recognizing our worth. And the result is that we're not fully showing up in the world. And that's what it's all about. I'm sure you would agree based on what you're doing is that's what we're here to do. I think men are pretty good at it. We could probably learn a little bit better is really expressing what we're here to do. And I believe that so many people, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but might be a question you're going to ask me, but there's sort of three-prong, but we jump ahead, right? We jump ahead and we just want to, get it out there in the world, but we got to do the work, right? So anyways, I might be jumping ahead, but
it's all good. Yeah. what comes up for me is a couple of things that you said. One is dull. Dull can be dangerous. You know, there's sometimes that underlying just little bit of dullness where life is good, and you know things are going well, but there's just, you know, so it's a bit dull, and that can be dangerous because it's not necessarily hitting you over the head, but you know, I think some women interpret living up to your potential with doing more. And in fact, what I hear you say, and we'll kind of segue the conversation a bit, is what I hear you say is it's not about doing more. It's about just pausing to realign and then moving forward. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, what you've most observed in the patterns with the women that you've been working with, what the culprits are, and what are some of these prongs in your work that you're, you know, that you've found.
Yeah. And, you know, the interesting thing is that, you know, that was my story around, you know, I was adopted and not feeling worthy or good enough or lovable. But the interesting thing is working with so many women is that the stories may be different, but the underlying beliefs are there. And what is these beliefs, you're talking about culprits, is I believe that, yes, we may be conditioned in our lifetime, whether it's been, you know, whatever, teachers, friends, parents, obviously, always like to blame our parents, but we've been conditioned in this lifetime. But I think there's a big part of that we've taken on as women, past generations of oppression, right? So we've taken that on. And that's where I'm just in such a mode where I just want to like shift this among women collectively. But the culprits would be that, you know, being conditioned in this lifetime or past. I also think the culprits would be around our society really, really values being busy, go, do. And we fall into that. But we need to kind of like, wait, is this normal? Like, we just kind of follow the norm, but it's a matter of being a little more impeccable, stepping it up. And, you know, is that normal? Is that feel right? We're on autopilot, right? So we value being really busy and doing, go. And yeah, thus the burnout. But we also, conversely, we're not really valuing our beingness. We really value our doingness, but we're not really valuing our beingness. And that makes us so disconnected to who we are and what we're here to do, right? And that's where we were talking about the alignment earlier. And so the alignment is so, so important. So some of the patterns would be, you know, becoming a human doing, right? Or external validating ourselves, looking outside. Well, maybe that's the way to do it, or that's the way to do it. And, you know, I call those bids for love, bids for approval, bids for acceptance, recognition, validation. There's so many bids. We do it unconsciously for the most part, but when we bring them to the surface, that's a lot of the work I do. We bring it to the surface like, oh gosh, I didn't realize I was doing that, right? And so that's the first step, right? And sometimes that's kind of the boring step, is becoming a little more aware. But when you do the work, that's where things just get so juicy. But doing the work is the awareness of like, wow, I'm really not in my power. Really, I'm not really aligned with who I am and what I'm here to do, right?
What I love about your work, just to kind of pull it up a level, a bird's eye view, and just maybe even a bit philosophical, is what I love about your work, and bear with me for a minute, because it might seem like it contrasts, is this. I think sometimes women hold themselves back from being how great they can actually be, and becoming the leader they were born to be, because they can't actually imagine doing anymore. And so your comment about doing and all the bids out there brings up a point for me, and that is around effectiveness. Like, yes, we do, but are we being effective? Are we being efficient? Are we really being aware of our energy? And It really does. You know, I've had some personal lessons, the universe, you know, hitting me on the side of the head in the last year or so. So I think, you know, it's so fitting to have this conversation and also to share your work, because we can be the leaders we were born to be. And we don't have to hold ourselves back for fear that we can't possibly do it all. So we stay small.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is it's not about doing, it's about being. And I'm just wondering if you could kind of take us through the prongs of your work and just explain a little bit more about that.
So just before I do this, want to explain is I think there's the doing and the being. And I just did a video on this, and it was around, you know, doing, and how exhausted we get, right? The doing, we have to do the do, right? Yeah. But who's on first? But we have to do the doing from the beingness, right? So we connect, and from that place, it's our GPS, we go out and do. But so many people are just doing this, maybe this will work, maybe I'll do that. So disconnected, and it's exhausting, right? And it's so inefficient. But doing from the being. So, sorry, what was your question around sort of the bigger picture of the work that I do?
Exactly. Like, I'd love to understand, you know, what the three pillars, what the three prongs of your work really look like, and actually how you take a woman, you know, just from A to B, because I think it's so important to catch this concept. I just think it's very timely.
Yeah. And not to oversimplify, but just for today's purposes, as I chunk it down to three steps. And I'm sure you would agree, the first step is awareness, right? Like, unless you have the awareness that you want to change, well, I guess you can have the awareness and not want to change, right? But you have to have that awareness if you want to make the change. So having that awareness is a shedding the light. And I talk about the different ways we give our energy away, how we get misaligned. And that's where I love when people kind of have their epiphany moments. It's like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't realize, like I was saying, I was doing that. So it's awareness. It's awareness that I'm not aligned. I'm not in my power. I don't like the word not, but you have to go there to turn that around to get aligned. So it's the awareness is the first step. And the second step is reclaiming that, and then coming from that place. And I really think of step one and step two is doing the work. But the key is most people want to, you know, shine the light on, you know, what they're already good at, or what looks, you know, the squirrel scenario, right? Or they just, you know, shiny object here. They just go to step three, which is express. And the express, another way to put it, is getting aligned and catapulting. And sometimes I think the word catapult's thrown out there, but I love it, because truly when you do the work, step one, awareness, step two is around reclaiming that, getting aligned, and maybe easier said than done, step one, step two. But when you really do the work, step three is all around expressing. Step three is expressing. It falls into place. It just falls into place. And that's the part I love, right? I love that part when women just they do get more aligned. Of course, it's not just going to be overnight, but, you know, it's taken me decades to get to this point where, you know, I feel like I'm fully expressing. But, you know, we bump up against things like, you know, so many times I work with women, they're like, yeah, I really want to do that, but I really want to do that, but, you know, I always say we got to butt the butts, you know. And for me, what I would butt up against is, you know, what are people going to think? And who am I to do that? Who am I to do that? So go back to kind of playing small, you know, what will people think? But we've got to, you know, when we become collective, there's so much power being collective, a collective unit, and having that accountability to hold each other. I mean, you're brilliant at that, to really, you know, catapult and express that. That's what we're here to do. Show up more, express. That's what we're here to do. Do the work, show up.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And I think when you can build a really strong fabric of women that are all, you know, like, we're doing it, we just keep doing it. You know, it's a practice that you really do feel stronger and more powerful when you know you're part of a collective. I can certainly appreciate that. I wanted to ask you for some personal advice, and maybe also from the women that you've worked with. It very much is a practice. You know, doing the work is it's a practice, and I wonder if you have any favorite routines or rituals that work into your daily practice that really help you to stay grounded and to continue doing the work and putting yourself first and focus on the being before you go forward with the doing.
Yeah. And I mean, we could probably talk about a lot of different ways. Like I do something on an annual basis. I do things on a monthly basis. I'll do things quarterly. But I'd say the biggest thing is a daily routine. Some people might do this at nighttime, the middle of the day. Personally, I believe morning is the best time to connect in. And whenever I'm going to call it sitting, I sit. You know, let people call it meditation or prayer, whatever it might be for different people and different philosophies and beliefs. But for me, I sit every single morning, and it goes into sort of three, I flow with it, but there's sort of three sort of segments to it. And, you know, personally, the first thing I do is gratitude. I just connect in. I connect into gratitude. And I know that, you know, sometimes we know better, but do we do better? That's not new. Anyone listening, saying, oh yeah, I've done the gratitude thing, but really go into that state of gratitude and feel it. It's one thing to think it, but to feel it. You know, just last night, my daughter came home and I was sitting there for a moment. I just looked at her. You know, it was a beautiful summer night. It is summer, isn't it? Almost. And I just like sat there and I just looked at her and felt the evening warmth and just like soaked it in. But doing that every single morning, gratitude. And the next piece is I connect in, and I try to connect into, I say try, I don't like the word try, but it's not all, I'm still working on it, but connecting into what I call pure awareness. Some people say God energy. It can be God energy for me too. Just connecting in to the stillness, listening to me, which is no different than anyone else. And it's incredible what comes from that piece. And then the third part really for me is visualization. So if there's something I'm working on, I'll visualize it. It could just be for a moment. But the key for me when I'm doing visualization is feeling it. That's totally the key, right? And I could do a whole topic on manifestation around the visualization, manifestation, and feeling it and bringing it into reality in that moment. And then another thing you and I were talking about, I know you're really big on this. And when I ran a women's business networking group, I always had women come with an ask, right? And something, this will be a fourth thing I add in every now and then when I'm just feeling like, you know, I would love some extra support here. And I'll put out an ask. And it is crazy when you're coming from that place, your asks are answered. It's not always what you think it's going to look like, but the asks are answered. And it might come, you know, a week later. You know, I'm not going to get into the story right now, but I had it was about 3 weeks ago, I had an ask. And I got up and I went and got my mail, and my ask was in the mail. And it's like, woohoo, I love how this works, right? I told my girlfriend, she's like, I'm going to try that. I was like, well, that's great, but you've got to do the doing. You've got to sort of be the being and then go out and the doing. You got to come from that place first, right? So
yeah, I think a couple things that come up for me, and one is around the ask. For me, the ask grounds the visualization. Like if we can kind of clearly put out our intentions, it grounds what we're visualizing. It, you know, it gives it a really grounded point to it. And the other point I wanted to make just around gratitude was sometimes it's hard for me to shift from thinking, being grateful, to feeling it. And one of the things that I do is I just try to use all of my senses. If I'm grateful for something, I know you mentioned when you were sitting with your daughter, like you felt the warm summer evening. And I just feel like when I go through all of my senses, how does it
feel,
smell. How
taste,
does it?
smell.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that really helps me to get out of my head. And so
Yes.
I just thought I'd throw that in there
Yeah.
as well.
And one extra thing is too, when you connect in, I mean, the rest of the day, I mean, trust me, I've done where, I'm all connected and I come out and it's like disconnected, right? Like I'm not perfect. I'm still working on it. But when I do, there's such a difference between when I do the morning work or if I don't, it's very rare that I miss a day, but it's so different. But when I do, I feel like I've got this internal GPS. I mean, our body has its own inherent wisdom, right? But it's just like, and I studied Chinese medicine years ago, and the saying we all had all the time is our body's always talking to us. Are we listening? And we're usually not, right? So I'm still working on it, but we've got this internal GPS, and it's just a matter of believing it actually works and making that practice, right?
So Janine, if women want to connect with you at a deeper level, they're kind of interested. They might have a couple of questions about your work. I want to ask you number one, what's the best way to reach you, to interact with you? And I also know that you have an event coming up, and I'm wondering if you could just speak for a few minutes about that opportunity as well.
Yeah, and if anything resonates, I'd love to connect. JanineBrolly.com is probably the best way. Of course, Facebook. The Facebook page we have is The Worthy Woman, A-N. And so either way, reach out, or my Facebook. And my event, yes, super excited. We're doing a masterclass a week yesterday, the 13th in North Vancouver. And I'm not sure if you're going to put it in this link or...
Yeah, I certainly can.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'd love to have you. And we're just it's only an hour and a half. It's a free masterclass. It's just getting the word out, connecting with women. It's all about being of service. So it's only an hour. We'd love to have you. And again, it's going through the whole, having the awareness, like, whoa, am I in my energy or not? Am I giving away my energy? And how to shift that into being in your personal power. And then, tapping into what is really calling us, right? And then putting that out there.
Well, I know one of your sayings is to live with ease and elegance. And I just love that. And I, for one, am totally looking forward to the masterclass, and just to meet some other women that come out. And we're all on the same journey. We're all creating and living that daily practice. So I thank you for bringing your work to the world and for talking to us about it today.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you do, Charlene.
Take care. Thanks so much, and we'll speak again.
Okay. Thank you.